My son slapped me and said, "This isn't your home anymore. Get out." It happened right after my husband's funeral. So I left, and I took the mortgage with me. By morning, the locks were changed, but the bank hadn't been notified yet. "This isn't your home anymore. Get out." His words cut deeper than the slap. His hand cracked across my face with a force I never thought he could summon, neither physically nor emotionally, especially not toward me. Yet there it was, in the living room, barely 5 feet from the casket where his father still lay, surrounded by wilting lilies and the soft murmur of grieving relatives. My cheek burned, not only from the strike, but from the betrayal. I spoke clearly. "No, I don't." "Get out," he spat, his voice cold and unrecognizable, calculated and harsh. Behind him, his wife stood with arms crossed, chin raised, a slight smirk on her lips. She had always considered the house hers and treated me like a temporary visitor in my own home. I had given birth to this boy. I had held his hand through tears over broken toys, scraped knees, and first heartbreaks. I had argued with school principals when he was unjustly blamed in 5th grade. I worked double shifts to pay his tuition after his father lost his job. I did all of it without ever expecting a thank you. Now he was throwing me out. I didn't cry. I couldn't. The shock built a wall inside me, so thick that no tears could escape. I looked him squarely in the eyes. He couldn't hold my gaze for long, but I could, because at that moment I was more than a grieving widow or a disrespected mother. I was something steadier, something older, something he had underestimated. I turned silently. My suitcase still sat unpacked in the hallway corner from my hospital visit a week prior, my husband's final stay. I pulled it toward the door, my footsteps quiet on the hardwood floor we had installed together 37 years ago. I didn't take everything, not the photo albums, the ceramic angel from my mother, or my favorite quilt. But I took something they'd regret losing, the mortgage. The cold air hit me again as I stepped outside, but it was kinder than my son's hand. The sky was gray, and soft snowflakes began drifting down, settling on the folds of my black coat. I didn't brush it away. It made me feel alive, real. I walked down the driveway, past the car my husband and I had paid off together, past the roses we planted on our 20th anniversary, past the wind chimes that used to sing when Andrew came home from school. No one followed me. No one stopped me, not even him. At the corner, I pulled out my phone and called a taxi. While I waited, I sat on a bench outside the gas station. A teenage clerk looked out at me and came outside. "Ma'am, are you okay?" he asked. I had baked him cookies one Christmas years ago. "I'm fine," I lied, "just waiting for a ride." "Want to wait inside where it's warm?" he offered. I nodded. He didn't ask more, or stare at the bruises already blossoming on my cheek. The motel room smelled of bleach and sadness, but the heater worked and the bed was clean. The receptionist didn't ask questions. She offered me tea and a blanket. I declined both. I stared at the ceiling for hours. I still felt the sting not from the slap, but from his words. "This isn't your home anymore." I had scrubbed every inch of that house, paid half of it, cooked in it, prayed in it, fought for it. It wasn't just a house. It was a life. And now I was being told to leave it behind like a suitcase. But I hadn't told them everything. I hadn't told them that the mortgage wasn't only in my late husband's name. I was still the co-signer, the co-owner. My name sat right there on the deed and the loan, because my husband had known. He had known what could happen. In one of our last conversations, he said something I thought I'd never need to remember. "If I go first," his voice shaky, "don't tell Andrew about the documents, not unless he hurts you." I had placed those documents in a safe deposit box at the bank, along with something else. A letter he wrote, a backup will, and a clause that would change everything. The next morning, I called not Andrew, but the bank. I asked them to stop the automatic mortgage payments. I gave them my name, my ID, and the account number. They verified it. "You're listed as a co-owner and co-borrower, ma'am." "You can do that," the banker said. I thanked her and hung up. By noon, my son would find the locks changed, the door wrecked. But the real shock would come later, when the bank called. By then, I would be far away, not hiding, just quiet. I had spent my whole life being quiet. Now my silence would speak loudest. That house didn't fall from the sky. It wasn't a gift. It was built brick by brick, check by check, sacrifice by sacrifice. In 1987, when the snow fell heavier than usual and heating bills almost ruined us, my husband and I signed the first mortgage papers. I still remember the ink smudging slightly from my nervous hands. I had insisted on being a co-owner, not because I didn't trust him, but because his credit was a mess. He had just closed a failed auto repair shop, and banks had rejected him more than once. But I had steady work. For over a decade, I had been a medical clerk at the local clinic Reliable Income, clean credit. My name opened the door. My name got us the loan. So my name went on the deed. We rarely talked about it after that. He was proud but quiet about the arrangement. Still, when we planted our first hydrangeas in the front yard, he whispered, "We built this together, you and me." And we did. Every month we paid on time. Sometimes we skipped dinners out or Christmas presents. Sometimes we patched holes in the roof ourselves, using duct tape and determination. But we never missed a payment. The bank sent statements in both our names. The mailbox always knew we were equals. But when my husband fell ill in 2012, everything changed. The strong man who once lifted me over puddles now struggled to lift a coffee mug. Medical bills mounted. Insurance barely covered anything. He couldn't work anymore, and Social Security was slow and stingy. So I took on more hours at the clinic, switched to night shifts, learned how to stretch groceries to last a week. I even cleaned houses on weekends, wearing gloves to hide my cracked knuckles. But I never complained, not to him, not to Andrew. Andrew had just started his own family. He was trying to build something too. I didn't want to burden him. I told him we were fine even when I counted pennies for gas. When he asked why I looked tired, I smiled and blamed it on age. He never asked again. Maybe that was my mistake. Maybe if I had let him see what I was truly doing, he might have respected me more. Or maybe not. Maybe it wouldn't have changed anything. But I chose silence. I chose to protect him from the weight I carried. And now, years later, he threw me out of the very house my name had helped build. It wasn't just insulting, it was erasure. They acted like it was theirs. They walked through its halls like royalty of something they hadn't earned. His wife changed the curtains, repainted the living room, remodeled the kitchen, all without ever asking me. She claimed it was her domain. I let her believe that. I didn't want to fight. I just wanted peace in my final years. I thought if I gave them space, they'd give me respect. Instead, they gave me orders. I remember one evening, a few months ago, when I was dusting the bookshelf. She said, "You really should ask before touching things. We're trying to keep the aesthetic consistent." It was my bookshelf, my books. Even the shelf was built by my husband's hands. I went back to my room, shut the door, and cried quietly for the first time in a long time. Not because of her words, but because I saw what was coming. She was rewriting the story, And Andrew let her. He started calling less, stopped asking for my opinion. He treated me like an extended guest, tolerated but not welcomed. I watched it all silently. I didn't push back. I didn't wave documents or cause scenes, but I never threw anything away. Every mortgage document, every payment slip, every copy of the deed. I kept them in a neat manila folder in my bottom drawer. When my husband died, I took that folder and placed it in the safe deposit box at the bank, along with a backup copy of his will and a letter he left for me. I had protected Andrew all his life, but I had protected myself too. When they slammed the door in my face, they thought they had control. They didn't know the history. They didn't know the house wasn't just wood, drywall, and paint. It was names on paper. And one of those names was still mine. A week before he died, my husband called me into the bedroom while Andrew and his wife were out buying groceries. He lay in bed, thinner than I'd ever seen, his bones showing through his flannel pajamas. But his eyes were sharper than they'd been in weeks. "Come sit," he said, patting the mattress. I sat. He reached into the drawer and pulled out a small brown envelope. "Don't open it now," he said, placing it in my hands. "And don't tell Andrew it exists, not unless—" He trailed off coughing. "Not unless what?" I asked gently. He looked at me a long moment. "Not unless he hurts you." I stared, confused. "What do you mean, hurts me?" He paused, catching his breath. "I've seen how he talks to you sometimes, the way she treats you, and he lets it happen." I swallowed hard, not wanting to discuss it, not with him in this state, not now. "You're overthinking it," I whispered. "He's just stressed." But my husband shook his head. "You've been too generous with your forgiveness," he said. "That's why I had the papers drafted. I made sure the lawyer included something just in case, because if I'm gone before you and they turn against you, I want you protected." I tightened my grip on the envelope. "What's inside?" "A second will, a supplemental clause. It's notarized and legal. If Andrew ever insults, abuses, or tries to evict you from this home, he loses all claim, every penny, every title, every right." My hands trembled. He went on. "I never wanted it to come to that, but I needed to know that if I'm not here, you still have some control, some justice." I nodded, my eyes burning. I leaned forward and kissed his forehead. "Thank you," I said, my voice breaking. "But I hope I never have to use it." He smiled faintly. "Me too." He passed away 5 days later. The funeral was simple, cold, and quick. His friends came, along with some old colleagues. Andrew barely said 2 words during the service. His wife made herself the center of attention, sobbing loudest, even though she'd only known him for 10 years. I kept my silence. I clutched the folded flag and the last photo we'd taken together, holding the unopened letter in my coat pocket. The next morning, I went to the bank. The woman at the front desk recognized me. Her name tag read Melinda. "Safe deposit box?" she asked kindly. I nodded. "Box 221 under Eileen Carter." She verified my ID, handed me the key, and led me to the private room. I opened the box and placed the letter inside, along with the supplemental will, a USB stick with scanned mortgage documents, and a copy of our original title. I labeled everything, "in case of emergency," then locked it away. I didn't want to think about it anymore, or imagine a future where my son would make me need it. But that version of the world had arrived. 3 days after the slap, I returned to the bank. Melinda wasn't there. A new clerk, a young man who looked barely 20 but spoke with care, helped me. "In need of access?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "Box 221. He led me back to the same private room. When I opened the box, I hesitated. This time my hands didn't shake. I took out the letter first. The paper was slightly yellowed around the edges, but my husband's handwriting remained clear, steady, and familiar. It began, "To my dearest Eileen." I read it again, though I had memorized it. "If you're reading this, then I'm gone. And if you're reading this because Andrew did what I hope he never would, then I am sorry. But you must know this. You are not powerless. You are not invisible. This house was yours as much as mine. Your hands built it. Your sacrifice paid for it. And no one, especially not our son, gets to erase that." A lump rose in my throat. "There is a clause in the supplemental will. You know it. Use it if you must. Don't let guilt keep you silent. You've spent a lifetime being the glue for this family. Let this be the moment you stop holding it together for everyone else." He had signed and dated it, October 14th, 2020, just weeks before his last hospitalization. Below the letter, the supplemental will confirmed everything. It named me the primary executive custodian of the estate and included a very specific clause. If Andrew Carter ever physically or verbally abuses me or tries to evict me from the family home, he forfeits all inheritance rights immediately. The estate would then transfer to a designated trust under my sole control. It was signed by 2 witnesses and notarized legally ironclad. I sat quietly in the bank's vault room for a long time, breathing deeply. I hadn't wanted this power, but they forced my hand. They had forgotten something crucial. Just because I had been quiet didn't mean I had been careless. I returned the documents to the box, took out the USB, and slipped it into my purse. I planned to send the files to the lawyer later that day, along with the recording I'd made the night of the slap, because I had preserved that too. His words were clear. "This isn't your home anymore. Get out." That was all I needed, proof and purpose. My husband had prepared me. Now I would prepare for the reckoning. The very next morning I arrived at the bank. Snow had crusted into ice overnight, and the sidewalks were slick beneath my boots. But I walked carefully, not slowly, but deliberately, with intent. I wasn't stumbling, afraid, or broken. I was done being silent for the sake of peace. By 9:05 a.m., I sat across from a loan officer in a small glass room. Her name tag read, Jessica. She wore a burgundy blazer and had kind eyes, but I noticed a flicker of curiosity when she read my request. "You'd like to terminate the automatic mortgage payments, Mrs. Carter?" "Yes," I said firmly, "and I'd like to review the full loan file originals, if possible." Jessica blinked. "We can prepare copies for you. Are you aware this action may affect—" "I'm the co-borrower," I interrupted. "The loan is under both my late husband's name and mine. I have every right to revoke authorization. You'll find my name on every page." She paused, tapping her keyboard, then nodded. "You're correct, and you're also listed as a co-owner on the property title." "I know," I said. "Please prepare the documents." She excused herself briefly and returned with a thick manila folder with my name neatly typed on the tab. I smiled faintly at the sight of it. 35 years of payment statements, renewals, all accounted for, all mine to claim. I signed the revocation form. It took less than 10 minutes. 10 minutes to undo what they believed was permanent. Jessica handed me the file. "Is there anything else I can assist you with, Mrs. Carter?" "Yes," I said. "I'll be transferring the file to my lawyer later today. In the meantime, please flag the account. No one is to resume payments or renegotiate terms without my written consent." She nodded. "Of course, we'll place a lock on it." As I left the bank, the wind caught my coat. I pulled it tight around me, but inside, something warm flickered. Not anger or revenge, just assurance, a quiet kind of strength. I had been preparing for this moment, even when I didn't realize it. At home, in the tiny one-room apartment I'd leased monthly, I opened my laptop and plugged in the USB. The folder opened instantly scanned copies of every critical document. My husband had been meticulous, labeling each file by date, type, and legal reference. At the bottom, I added one more. The recording from the night Andrew slapped me. I had recorded it out of habit. After my husband's first stroke, I developed the habit of recording important conversations, doctor's instructions, medication lists, even grocery orders. That night, I had the same small recorder in my coat pocket, intending to make a note to refill my prescription. Instead, it captured everything. His voice, the slap, the exact words, "This isn't your home anymore. Get out." It was damning clear and unmistakable. I uploaded the file to a secure drive and emailed it to the woman who had helped my husband draft the supplemental will, his former attorney. Subject: urgent activation of Clause 17B. I attached everything: the recording, the scanned will, the mortgage file. 5 minutes later, my phone rang. "Mrs. Carter, this is Megan Dale. I received your email and have reviewed everything." Her voice was calm, steady, professional. "I want you to know I'm sorry for what happened, but more importantly, you've done everything right." I said nothing. Megan continued, "Clause 17B is valid. The audio recording verifies both verbal abuse and unlawful eviction. According to your husband's will, your son forfeits all inheritance rights effective immediately. Can you act on this now?" "Yes. I'll file the notification today. We'll issue a cease claim letter to your son's attorney and freeze all estate asset disbursements. Do you have a place to stay for now?" I said I did. "I'd advise we schedule a formal review this week, but in the meantime, rest assured you are no longer powerless." I thanked her and hung up. That night, I sat in the armchair by the window. The motel was modest, but the view was clean. No traffic, no yelling, no passive-aggressive silences at dinner, just silence. Not the silence of being ignored, but the silence of being free. I thought of my husband, how he anticipated this, how he worried not about death, but what would come after, about me, left behind, in the care of a son who forgot how to care. I had forgiven Andrew many times before, for missed birthdays, short tempers, little lies. I told myself that was what mothers did, that love meant enduring. But love should never mean erasing yourself to keep the peace. I had done that for too long. The next day, Megan filed the necessary documents. The court issued a preliminary freeze on the estate. My son would be notified within 48 hours. At the same time, the bank processed my mortgage suspension and flagged the account so no future payments would be authorized. In the language of finance and law, I had become a wall, a legal, financial, and emotional barrier Andrew could no longer cross. I didn't call him. I didn't warn him. I acted silently because the most powerful thing a woman can do is remember everything she once forgot she knew. The first time I saw it was through someone else's phone. I was at the pharmacy waiting for my prescription when the young woman behind the counter, who used to babysit my neighbor's twins, showed me a post. "Mrs. Carter, I didn't know you moved out. Your daughter-in-law's been posting about the renovations." I stared at the screen. There it was, a bright, staged photo of the living room where my husband and I had danced on our 25th anniversary. Now stripped bare, new flooring, white and gold curtains, a cream leather sectional. The caption read, "Fresh start. Goodbye to the darkness." Darkness, that's what she called me. I nodded politely, took my bag, and walked back to my apartment without a word. But inside something began to settle, not anger or sadness, but a strange, bitter taste of clarity. They truly believed they had won. They thought I had slunk away like an old coat they finally donated, outdated, no longer useful. They had no idea what was coming. The photos kept coming. Their kitchen remodel, their new mattress, a chandelier in the hallway, finally ours. The captions read, "She posted a boomerang video of Andrew hanging a framed sign that said, 'Love lives here.'" They were nesting, boasting, inviting friends over for wine nights and charcuterie boards served on the dining table my husband had built with his own hands. And through it all, not one message, not one call, not even a thank you for the decades I had poured into those walls. Then, exactly 31 days after I terminated the mortgage payments, the notice arrived. The bank, efficient as always, sent a formal letter to the primary address on file. Subject: Default Notice Carter Residence. Due to the co-borrower's revocation of payment authorization and failure to meet scheduled obligations, the mortgage is in breach of contract. If not resolved within 15 business days, the property will be marked for foreclosure and repossession. I didn't have to see their faces to imagine them. The silence as the envelope was opened, the disbelief turning to confusion, the frantic search for a mistake, the quick shift to anger, then the dawning horror, because they didn't know. They had never read the fine print. They'd assumed I was just an old woman with no teeth left to bite. But I was the teeth. I was the signature. I was the name beside their dream. And now I was the reason it was unraveling. Andrew called that evening. His name appeared on my phone. For the first time in over a month, I almost let the phone ring, but I needed to hear it just once. So I answered. His voice was rough, not angry yet, just confused. "Small Mom?" he said. I stayed silent. "I don't understand. We got this letter about the house. Something about foreclosure. What's going on?" There was silence. Did you miss a payment?" I counted 3 full seconds before replying slowly. "Yes." Another pause. His voice broke. "Why would you do that? We're going to lose the house." I didn't respond. "Mom, please," he pleaded, now crying. I could hear his heavy, uneven breaths, the sound of a man who had just realized he was flawed. "We didn't mean it. It was just—" Emotions were high after Dad's funeral. "We weren't thinking." "You weren't thinking," I echoed bitterly. That was always their excuse to erase decisions they had already made. "Please," he whispered, "we can fix this. Just tell the bank it was a mistake. Restart the payments. We can talk. We can figure something out." I closed my eyes. This was the same voice that had told me to leave, that had been silent while his wife stripped my life from the walls and painted everything beige. "I can't," I said simply, "but it's your house too." "No," I interrupted, voice calm as glass. "You told me it wasn't." Silence followed. I didn't wait for a reply. I pressed the red button and ended the call. Then I blocked his number. That night, I sat by the window listening to the traffic hum outside. I sipped chamomile tea and pulled a blanket over my lap. Hurting him gave me no satisfaction, but protecting myself gave me peace. They thought they had won, but they never understood the rules. I arrived late on purpose. The family meeting was already in progress in my sister-in-law's living room, the so-called neutral ground. A long table was set with coffee brewed and lemon cookies arranged as if we were at a garden party, not a trial. Andrew sat at the head of the table next to his wife, who wore a pale pink blazer and a fragile, fake porcelain smile. When I opened the door, the conversation stopped. I didn't apologize for being late or greet anyone. I walked in with my tote bag slung over one shoulder, coat on, boots wet from melting snow, No excuses, no explanations. I walked to the center, set down my bag, and began laying out 4 items carefully on the table. The original will, the supplemental will, a USB with an audio recording, and a notarized copy of the mortgage agreement. They were nesting, boasting, inviting friends over for wine nights and charcuterie boards served on the dining table my husband had built with his own hands. And through it all, not one message, not one call, not even a thank you for the decades I had poured into those walls. Then, exactly 31 days after I terminated the mortgage payments, the notice arrived. The bank, efficient as always, sent a formal letter to the primary address on file. Subject: Default Notice Carter Residence. Due to the co-borrower's revocation of payment authorization and failure to meet scheduled obligations, the mortgage is in breach of contract. If not resolved within 15 business days, the property will be marked for foreclosure and repossession. I didn't have to see their faces to imagine them. The silence as the envelope was opened, the disbelief turning to confusion, the frantic search for a mistake, the quick shift to anger, then the dawning horror because they didn't know. They had never read the fine print. They'd assumed I was just an old woman with no teeth left to bite. But I was the teeth. I was the signature. I was the name beside their dream. And now I was the reason it was unraveling. Andrew called that evening. His name appeared on my phone. For the first time in over a month, I almost let the phone ring, but I needed to hear it just once, so I answered. His voice was rough, not angry yet, just confused. "Small Mom," he said. I stayed silent. "I don't understand. We got this letter about the house. Something about foreclosure. What's going on?" There was silence. Did you miss a payment?" I counted 3 full seconds before replying slowly, "Yes." Another pause. His voice broke. "Why would you do that? We're going to lose the house." I didn't respond. "Mom, please," he pleaded, now crying. I could hear his heavy, uneven breaths, the sound of a man who had just realized he was flawed. We didn't mean it. It was just... Emotions were high after Dad's funeral. We weren't thinking. "You weren't thinking," I echoed bitterly. That was always their excuse to erase decisions they had already made. "Please," he whispered, "we can fix this. Just tell the bank it was a mistake. Restart the payments. We can talk. We can figure something out." I closed my eyes. This was the same voice that had told me to leave, that had been silent while his wife stripped my life from the walls and painted everything beige. "I can't," I said simply. "But it's your house too." "No," I interrupted, voice calm as glass. "You told me it wasn't." Silence followed. I didn't wait for a reply. I pressed the red button and ended the call. Then I blocked his number. That night, I sat by the window listening to the traffic hum outside. I sipped chamomile tea and pulled a blanket over my lap. Hurting him gave me no satisfaction, but protecting myself gave me peace. They thought they had won, but they never understood the rules. I arrived late on purpose. The family meeting was already in progress in my sister-in-law's living room, the so-called neutral ground. A long table was set with coffee brewed and lemon cookies arranged as if we were at a garden party, not a trial. Andrew sat at the head of the table next to his wife, who wore a pale pink blazer and a fragile, fake porcelain smile. When I opened the door, the conversation stopped. I didn't apologize for being late or greet anyone. I walked in with my tote bag slung over one shoulder, coat on, boots wet from melting snow. No excuses, no explanations. I walked to the center, set down my bag, and began laying out 4 items carefully on the table. The original will, the supplemental will, a USB with an audio recording, and a notarized copy of the mortgage agreement. His face twisted in disbelief. Then he fell to his knees on the old carpet outside my door. "Please, Mom, I'm sorry. We're sorry." His wife bowed her head but stayed standing, clutching her purse like claws. For the first time, she looked less in control and more cornered by consequences. "I made a mistake," he whispered. "We both did. We let pride get in the way. We thought we were doing what was best, but we were cruel and wrong." I didn't move. "Please, Mom, if you could talk to the bank, reinstate the mortgage, let us take over payments, we'll pay everything. We'll make it right. You can come home or not. Whatever you want. Just don't let us lose the house." I opened the door wider. He looked up, hope flickering. I didn't invite them in. Instead, I stepped past them into the hallway and pulled a folded document from my purse, protected in a clear sleeve. "This," I said, handing it to him, "is the deed transfer." He blinked, confused. "What? You sold it?" "To whom?" his wife asked sharply, panic in her voice. "To the Elder Protection Foundation," I said. "They'll convert it into a transitional home for senior women who've been displaced. Women like me." Andrew's mouth opened, but no sound came out. "You sold it?" he whispered. I nodded. "Cash buyer, immediate transfer. It's done." His hands trembled as he clutched the paper. "Why would you do that? It was our home." "No," I corrected. "It was never yours. It was built by me and your father, paid for by my sweat, my second jobs, my silence. You lived in it. You used it. But it wasn't yours." His wife finally spoke. "That was a mistake. We got carried away. You could have talked to us." "I tried," I said. "Every time I was dismissed at dinner. Every time you rolled your eyes when I spoke. Every time you passed me like I was furniture. I spoke plenty. You just didn't listen." Andrew looked down, shoulders shaking. "I don't want your apology," I said. "I want your understanding." "I do understand," he said, tears falling freely. "I was wrong." I looked at him, my son, my boy who once gave me crayon cards for Mother's Day, who once held my hand crossing streets, who ran into my arms after school. He had grown into a man who forgot where he came from, but now he knelt, and I stood. "I forgive you," I said, "but I won't fix this for you." He nodded slowly, painfully. As I turned to go inside, I said one last thing. I didn't keep the house. I kept my peace. Then I closed the door. For the first time in years, I locked it, not to keep people out, but to keep peace in. I used part of the sale to buy a small cabin by a lake in Alaska. Not the postcard kind, no fancy renovations, no hot tub, no Instagram corners. Just 4 sturdy walls, a wood stove, and a view that made silence feel like music. The first morning there, I stood barefoot on the porch with a coffee mug warming my hands, watching mist rise off the water. It was so quiet I could hear my own breath. No locks, no voices behind closed doors, no one demanding I justify my existence. Just me, the trees, and a sky so wide it made the past feel small. For the first time in decades, I slept through the night. No dreams of slammed doors, no shouting voices over memories. Just sleep. Us. Peace. I unpacked slowly, one box at a time. I didn't bring much, just what mattered. A photo of my husband smiling in the garden. A crocheted blanket I made during his chemo days. The file folder, now thick with copies of my life. And a small black digital recorder. It had captured the moment they tried to erase me. Now it would help me reclaim the rest. I set up my laptop by the window, plugged in the recorder, and pressed play. His voice echoed in the empty room again. I didn't flinch this time. I had heard worse. I opened a blank document and began to write. I wrote about the hydrangeas we planted in '89, about the day the roof caved in from snow and how we fixed it together with borrowed ladders and prayer, about Andrew's birth and the first time he called me Mom. I didn't write to blame. I wrote to remember, to give myself back the years I folded into corners for the sake of peace. That evening, I sent my first audio file to Grandma True Stories. True Stories. A true story. My story not polished, not theatrical, just a voice that had waited too long. In the recording, I said, "These days, getting older made me invisible. But age is silence gathering power. Silence doesn't mean surrender. It means preparation. I didn't lose a home. I reclaimed a world. So if you're listening, if you've ever been pushed out of the life you helped build, know this: you are not alone. And you are not done." I didn't expect anyone to listen, but they did. Comments came in. Other women, other grandmothers, other silent rooms. I thought I was the only one. I had never heard anyone say what I felt for years. Thank you for speaking what I couldn't. Slowly, the silence became something else, a choir, a community, a quiet army of women who had nothing left to prove, but everything left to say. I still live in that cabin. I still wake with the light, drink my coffee slow, and let the peace linger. Sometimes I think of Andrew, the house, what could have been. But then I remember what I lost was made of walls. What I gained was made of truth. And truth, it doesn't rot. It waits. And when it finally speaks, it doesn't shout. It just doesn't stop. If you've ever been hurt by those who were supposed to protect you, remember, silence is not weakness. Subscribe to Grandma True Stories, where the forgotten find their voice again.